What's happening, ballers? John 105 here. The Staying Afloat update dropped not too long ago, and it was okay, honestly. I mean, the update has lots of new features, some good, some bad, and some okay. I don't really have a transition, just roll the intro already. Wurt Skilltree is the best thing that's happened to humanity in the last 20 years. I love clay. And I know what you're gonna say. John, aren't you the #1 hater of skill trees in this community? Aren't you the person that made a 5-minute video solely to hate on skill trees? Don't you think that statement is a bit hypocritical coming from you? Well, to address your questions, no, I'm not #1. I think I play second fiddle to someone when it comes to sheer time talking about it. And yes, I am a hypocrite. My favorite character getting a skill tree is no excuse to stop being critical of skill trees. Skill trees should still be removed. They are actively devolving Don't Starve Together into some kind of RPG monstrosity, in my opinion. Back on topic. The Wurt Skilltree is very polarizing. It has some of the best and most creative features while also having lots of dead weight in it. Let's start with the Amphibian branch of the tree. The first 3 tiers of the branch are a must, especially for spring, and getting wet for sanity regen is pretty easy via water balloons, rain, or missing rows when boating. Healing or hide is up to personal choice, but I'd rather avoid damage altogether with the slippery hide perk. This branch is very disappointing if I'm honest. They should have added a perk for Wurt to be able to swim in shallow water, or at least move a few meters into the water. That would have tied in perfectly with the new Marauders. The Merm branch, more specifically the Mosquito perks, are a complete scam. While it is cool to have mosquitoes leave you alone while you have the little doll with you, you can just A, clear them, or B, just fish in frog ponds. Or in the morning for that matter. I guess it is useful if you're making the Merm King in the swamp, but most Wurt players make the king at base that usually isn't near the swamp. The ExGaming is also a waste of skill points. All 3 craftable items are meh, to say the least. The fertilizer, while good for crops, is a waste of a skill point. The bloodshot is only useful for merms, but I'll explain why it's mediocre later. The skeeter bomb is the only half useful item in my opinion. The prospect of bombing your enemies with mosquitoes is funny, and the mosquitoes could prove as a good distraction. Itchcraft is also pretty disappointing. I would have loved to see a skill to defrost ponds during winter, or maybe a skill to make a mask that lets you trade with Pig King, or a way to dig up reed plants, I don't know. The Sensible Swamp Fighter perk is very interesting. At low health, your merms retreat and wait for you to heal them. I think this perk is good for an endurance fight like Bee Queen, or if you have limited merms for a fight. What happens is, over time, your merms, one by one, leave the fight because they're at low health. So you either die because all of your soldiers abandon you, or you go around babysitting them one after another, robbing yourself of the damage you could be doing to the boss. This is where the bloodshot is disappointing in my eyes. It only recovers a 1/6 of your guard's health, and using 2 skill points on it is a waste. Bump the healing up to 200 or 300, make the recipe more expensive, and you've got yourself a deal. I don't know though. Maybe there's some ancient strategy to it that only reveals itself after you've played around with it enough. The King's Quest is hands down the most unique thing about the skill tree. The Trident Quest is a bit unreasonable to get in pubs, but if you have a private server with friends, the whole quest is a good investment. The upgrades you and your merms get are busted. The Sated Sovereign perks are also of questionable quality. A fully fed, unaltered Merm King can last at max 10 days, if I'm not wrong. And to be honest, why would you need more time? 10 days is a lot of time to be away from base. What kind of adventures are you going on? Maybe the first point of Sated Sovereign is worth getting. Swamp Pathfinder is a pretty bad investment in my opinion. It's too situational to be worth it. It would have been cool to see a late game infinite clever disguise instead of this. Community Feeder is a cool tool to have, and it gives kelp more uses. The Superior Feeder is, well, superior to the smaller one. The difference is that the recipe needs an additional tentacle spots. So, pray tell, why would I ever use the inferior one? If there's a best option that requires just a teensy bit more effort to get, why would I ever settle for the inferior one? Industrious Merm skills are also pretty cool. They split your merms into gatherers and fighters. The gatherers can be used by other survivors and gives you a reason to make normal merm houses. Before the update, there was little reason to build them. Tools themselves are also pretty cool. Merms being able to dig up stuff is a very nice touch. The inferior superior problem still applies to this. It's stupid to waste a skill point on an inferior building that I'll never use. The hard-headed perks, like I said before, split guards and normal merms into gatherers and fighters. Guards before the update were beefy, but with the superior helmets are unstoppable. What's even better is that the helmets are dirt cheap. The inferior superior problem still applies. The affinities are very one-sided. The shadow affinity is so much better than the lunar one. The mudslingers are pretty meh, in my opinion. So what's the strategy? Simple. Jump and twirl, ballerina style. This is the setup I use for pubs, but if you play with friends, you could take this point from Sated Sovereign and put it into the 3rd King's Quest skill. You could also take the skills from the community feeder and put it into the 2 first Itchcraft skills for the Skeeter bombs, and to craft the fertilizer for Wormwood. With a more organized team, you could take the skill point from Slippery High 2 and put it into the Sensible Swamp Fighter, seeing as your friends can take the weight off you while you're healing Merms. Well, with that out of the way, let's get into the ocean changes. Wow, it's getting late. I'll have to cover this in another video. That's about it. Do your daily jump and twirl and subscribe.